Hello everybody and welcome to Groovy Movie Makeup. As you can see today, I am the bent neck lady from The Haunting of Hill House. Now, to give off the full effect I'd have to be bent like this the entire time, but you know, I'm not gonna do that. So it's just gonna look like I have a moldy testicle on my neck for this entire video. I loved this show. It's an incredible show, and not just for horror fans, and I'll get into why in a minute, but for horror fans it is amazing because the horror within it is very powerful, and Mike Flanagan uses suspense and mystery to keep us captivated, as well as some really terrifying visuals that can creep you out to the core. His methods are subtle yet have a huge impact, most notably what he does with the ghosts and the statues in the background, because like the entire show I was always looking in the background because sometimes you can miss it, but some freaky shit happens. There's always a ghost or a statue turning their head or looking one way at one moment and another way in another moment, and it just really messes you up. And it makes the environment of the house just seem so ominous and as if it's always watching. And I found whenever I'd see something like that, it would scare me more than a jump scare. The reason why non-horror fans will enjoy this show is because the scary parts only scratch the surface of what the show is actually about. In reality, the show is mainly about the dynamic of the Crane family and how they're dealing with their lives following the events of Hill House. Hill House and its ghosts are all a metaphor for the trauma, stress, and guilt of each character in the Crane family. They use the haunting of the ghost to represent how grief and guilt and trauma can haunt a human soul and take over your life. Each character is symbolically haunted in their own way, not only by the ghosts in the house, but by their own personal experiences. Shirley is haunted by the guilt of cheating on her husband. Steve is haunted by the guilt of selling out his family to make a profit with his novel, as well as his failing marriage. Theo is emotionally closed off, and though her powers have the opposite effect of getting really deep into people's souls and seeing everything, she chooses to restrict herself from that as much as she can and just keep herself guarded, which is not healthy. Luke is obviously burdened by his drug addiction. Nell is burdened by her mental illness as well as her sleep paralysis. Olivia is haunted by her mental illness and the overwhelming burden of motherhood, and Hugh is burdened by the traumatic events that occurred at Hill House, which resulted in the apparent suicide of his wife Olivia. From the beginning of the show, the goal is for the Crane family to reach their forever house. They move into Hill House with the intent on refurbishing it and selling it for a profit so that they can build the home of their dreams. The tragedy of all this is that Hill House does end up being their forever house. Literally, it's their forever house for Nell, Olivia, and Hugh, who end up dying in the house and their spirits stay there forever. But it's also the forever house for the surviving members of the family because they're never going to be able to let go of the events that transpired there, and they're never going to be able to escape those experiences. In a way, the mental illness of Olivia and Nell made them more vulnerable to the ghosts getting a hold of them. And I think that represents how mental illness can open your mind up to all these negative thoughts and really take over your life in a way that you can't control. For instance, Nell has been mortified by the haunting of the bent neck lady her whole life. It's something that has really damaged her psyche and follows her throughout her adulthood, and it's something that terrifies her and she can never let go of. But in the end, when it's revealed that she was the bent neck lady the entire time, it represents how her mental illness left her trapped and afraid and eventually led to her own death. In regard to Olivia, Poppy convinced Olivia that the outside world was too dangerous for her children, and she convinced her that killing her children will protect them from the outside world and keep them in Hill House for their entire life when they're safe. And Olivia eventually believed that dying in Hill House was like waking up in a safe and protected world. But in reality, giving yourself over to Hill House deprives you of all human experiences and leaves you empty. This theme follows the children to their adult lives. All of them have been struggling in a different way since they left Hill House. Their lives seem terrible and hard compared to the bright, happy childhood that they had before the events of Hill House happened. Olivia believes that ending your life will save you from the pain, but it is explained that going through experiences, even if they're bad, is what makes us human, and it's better than feeling nothing at all. We learn this when Theo touches Nell's body, and she feels the nothingness of being trapped in Hill House after death. From that moment on, her powers are suppressed by the nothingness. She's so desperate to feel again that she comes on to Shirley's husband. She says that the incredible guilt she felt from that incident was even better than feeling nothing at all. This proves that Olivia's delusions were wrong, and it's best to go out and experience the world. And though the kids end up going through hardships, it's best to let them go than to shield them from all human emotion. In regard to the Red Room, it was revealed in the end that the Red Room was a changing room that would change to appeal to all the different members of the family. It would make itself sort of a refuge in a way. For Luke, it was a treehouse. For Olivia, it was a reading room. For Theo, it was a dance studio. And for Steve, it was a game room. So these are all places that they would go and feel comfortable in the house. And the house did this on purpose because in the end, Nell explains that the house is kind of like a monster that feeds on whoever lives in it. And keeping them in those rooms where they think that they're safe and secure, that whole time the house and the ghosts within it were just feeding off of these characters, trying to draw them in and keep them there as long as possible. In the final episode, the Red Room reveals itself for what it truly is, which is a poisonous place that tries to take everything from you and keep you there forever. It brainwashes all the siblings and gives them visions of their worst fears, while Luke is literally dying of a drug overdose, which is a huge stress for all the members of the Crane family, and the house made it happen right before their eyes. It was trying to make their worst fears come to life. The only reason why the house didn't succeed was because of the ghost of Nell forgiving all of the members of her family. They gave their minds ease, which is the opposite of what the house was trying to do. In the end, though the surviving members of Hill House will never be able to forget what was done to them, they now have closure and are able to move on with their lives. They now have the strength to take control of the events that happened to them and not let the ghosts of the past keep them from moving forward. This is seen at the end when Steve reconciles with his wife, Shirley confesses to her infidelity to her husband, Theo opens herself up to a relationship, and Luke is on the road to recovery with his addiction. In the end, this show covers a lot of different themes that are very relatable to human life and mental illness and trauma and grief, and it kind of ties it all together, and the house is a symbol for all of it and the experiences are a symbol for all of it. The concept of whether terrible experiences that happen to all of us in life is better than not being alive at all, that's really a philosophical question that people have to figure out for themselves. But this show is trying to illustrate that everybody goes through terrible things in life. There's really no escaping it. Life isn't perfect, but in the end, would you rather be going through this or not exist at all? But if you have your family, if you have people around you that love you, and if you find the strength within yourself to not let those experiences take over your life, it is possible to move on. And I really think that's what the show was trying to say. This is now one of my favorite shows. I love Mike Flanagan so much, and he did not disappoint this time. He directed every single episode of this show, which is very rare for directors who move from movies to TV shows. You could really tell how much thought and detail and planning went into this show. It was a perfectly laid out masterpiece, and it did not take place in chronological order, which was a really smart move to do because he strategically laid out the events of the past and the present to build up suspense and slowly reveal the mystery of Hill House and not laying it out on the table all at the same time. And he also didn't do their childhood, everything that happened, then their adulthood. He was constantly jumping back and forth, which made it really interesting to see the characters develop in that sort of way. And it takes a genius to do that. And the ending of each episode leaves you dying to find out what happens next, which is why so many people binge watch this entire show in one sitting. I didn't do that because I didn't want it to be over fast, so I pretty much watched one episode a night or so. It was really hard. I recommend that you watch his movies Hush, Gerald's Game, Ouija Origin of Evil, and Oculus. They're all really, really good. Anyways, that's the end of my little analysis, but what did you guys think of the show, and do you agree with the themes that I stated, or do you think that the show was about something else entirely? Let me know in the comments. See you next time!